Hello, good day to you. Me, Andy here, talking really. And another DWP story today is the thing that nobody's talking about, apparently. I don't know if you've heard it, but this is something I've not heard recently or infrequent. This is a video from on YouTube from a person who is Damien Willie. He is a unpaid carer for his disabled wife and daughter, and he has made a video regarding the fact that the benefit system is collapsing. It's been run into the ground by the Tories mainly. The PCS union shows it's verging on collapse. So, what would happen if it did collapse in the near future? Where would that leave you? The Department of Work and Pension might be in a great deal more trouble than we ever thought. Obviously, with the backlogs of claims that there are, and they've got the UC system that's rubbish, and they can't really implement anymore because it will cost money. They have the reforms which have been proven difficult to the point of impossible to implement. They've been driven towards not helping people into work, but forcing them to do so by sanctions and penalising them. And really, it's not good. Not a good way to be. But anyway, have a look at this video. This is quite interesting, and I'll see if I can link it down below as well.
Right, so what's all this about then, Damo? I've heard nothing at all anywhere about the DWP being in trouble. Where has this come from? Well, unless it's the government cracking down on people, the government are calling shirkers because they aren't workers, or the disabled, the long-term sick, they're carers, people who've been out of work for a multitude of reasons, and indeed a great many people who are in work, but for whom work doesn't actually pay. Of course, where the DWP is concerned, you need to include pensioners as well in this. Unless it is a tax on people like that, red meat for the frothing gammon class that sells headlines, they don't care. Thankfully, alternative media is there who do, and all things DWP. If you aren't taking a look at Disability News Service, then you won't be hearing an awful lot about what's going on in the benefit system within Social Security or the DWP, or on a great many other things that are related to that. They are frankly disgusted that this story is not being picked up further, so I'm more than happy as a carer myself to draw attention to this, because so many low-income families won't have any idea of what is brewing in the Department for Work and Pensions, and I was stunned by this. The dossier has been put together by the Public and Commercial Services Union, trade unions doing the job again, the PCS, whose members include staff at the DWP, and this is where the crux of the problem lies. The DWP are so short-staffed now that they're barely able to keep it going. The PCS union itself has accused the DWP of deliberate neglect after its members said they believed benefit claimants in vulnerable situations were falling through the gaps in the system. One manager describing staff facing completely overwhelming workloads. Another, a DWP staff member who works in counter-fraud, compliance and debt, said, "We are also experiencing more threats of suicide by claimants, in some cases already attempted, sometimes successfully." The report, all 64 pages of it, that the mass media are ignoring, gives example after example after example of testimony from DWP employees that the absolute bare minimum is barely getting done, and people are already falling through the gaps. There's a race on to get everybody on legacy benefits like Job Seekers Allowance and Employment and Support Allowance, ESA, moved on to Universal Credit by the end of next year that we've heard the Tories come out with. But the workload for Universal Credit, however, is apparently already so unsustainable that if the workload can't be kept on top of, then people are falling through the cracks already. Almost certainly some will be amongst the most vulnerable. And what then will happen to them? Sanctions, presumably. It's always them that get the blame for anything going wrong, isn't it? Understaffing is so serious, such a massive threat to just being able to deliver the most basic service, that the DWP are short by some 30,000 people, 30,000 workers to meet required staffing levels. They can't recruit. Who wants to do the job, you might think? The emphasis is on punishing people rather than helping them. Certainly doesn't make for a good job satisfaction criteria, does it? But also people are being overworked due to the staffing levels. Sickness is up. Pay is low, so retention of staff is terrible as well. It is a department that has been run into the ground by the Tories for years because they are just fixated on getting people into work, whether they're able to do so or not. When working for the DWP itself is a low pay, stressful, overworked environment too, they aren't exactly leading by example either. Now, many people who have been victims of the system, I can include myself and my own family in this, we've been through this too, we've thought this too. Do we really care about these people? I gave some thought to this. Do I really care about the people who work in the DWP? When the media makes poverty clickbait programming, glorifying the punishment of the most vulnerable, getting more people to hate on them, the staff that make the news are always the rotten ones, so that we end up believing they're all like that. But they aren't. Most people who work there are going to be decent human beings just trying to get by, make a living like all of us. That they just happen to work for one of the most reviled government departments going because of how the Tories have run it, and not entirely excusing Labour before that either. The people there on wages so low, some of them, they are universal credit claimants themselves. One person working there said, I have worked for the DWP for over 40 years, and to be honest, I am totally worn out physically and mentally. My health has suffered enormously, having to struggle with always being understaffed. This is because of constant pressure, poor pay, and staff leaving to go to better jobs with better pay and less stressed. So I resigned. I felt I had no other option. The member of staff in question here saying, Employment and Support Allowance, ESA, was a ticking time bomb due to the lack of experienced staff, and warned that millions of ESA claims are incorrect, and these vulnerable customers could be owed thousands. There are more than 250 examples from different members of staff in the DWP that have given evidence for this dossier and made statements on what it is like to work there. Here's a couple of examples of what's been included in the report. I work in a small job centre in Wales. I suffer from late onset chronic fatigue as well as being autistic. After fighting, I finally got a reasonable adjustment to work from home on the 2 days our office is closed to the public. A month ago, I was informed I would have to return to the office full time as one of our work coaches was moving to a new role, and I would have to be in office to meet minimum numbers for health and safety, covering leave and other absences. This was to be until a replacement was recruited, but within a week became permanent. It's shameful that a disabled person's reasonable adjustment is being stolen away. Another wrote, I am part of a universal credit review team. There's around 2,000 of us across the country. My job is to establish if there is any fraudulent activity on a claim currently in place. If there is, I will then push it to a fraud advisor. As things stand, there are only 4 fraud advisors to support us. This has a huge impact on the workload as cases are taking months instead of days or weeks. It has a huge impact on the public purse as we are basically ignoring 90% of fraudulent activity. This essentially renders any universal credit review pointless. Even if we find anything, there's nowhere for it to go. If the government cared, they would have more staff to increase efficiency. So what's the response from the DWP been then, Damo? Well, on Wednesday, the DWP got in touch, so the day after. But they might as well have not bothered, because there was no response from Mel Stride to the dossier, or to say if the department accepted that there were problems with staffing levels, safeguarding flaws and unsafe conditions for both staff and claimants, including with Universal Credit and ESA. It also declined to provide a response from Stride to the concerns in the dossier about Universal Credit and the risk of vulnerable claimants falling through the gaps. The DWP also refused to say if Stride would meet with the union and how he responded to the union's claim that the DWP was a failing organisation in a state of crisis, and that this crisis had been created by a government whose policies were vindictive towards claimants who needed support. Did Mel Stride ever see it? Has he looked at it? Does he even know he's got it? A DWP spokesman said in a statement, "We are committed to supporting the well-being of our staff and provide access to a comprehensive range of assistance for their physical and mental health. We have recruitment plans in place to maintain key services, providing excellent opportunities for existing staff and new recruits who are playing a vital role in our next generation welfare reforms to help thousands back into jobs, grow the economy and drive down inflation." Yeah, it really sounds like they're listening, doesn't it? Great work by Disability News Service on this, and the PCS Union, of course. Please do look them up, subscribe and support to them if you can. The job they do, reporting and covering on the DWP stuff virtually exclusively, is so important because nobody else seems to.
But there you go. So there's the story. I'm sure you're going to be as annoyed as I am. So comments down below. Thank you very much, and I'll catch you later. Bye for now.